Welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back again. I love talking about this amazing body that we've been given. And I think it's a tragedy that so many people are not well. I think it's a tragedy that it's probably one of the most neglected forms of education is knowing about the human body. I'd like to quote a paragraph from an old book because it is said so well. Transgression of physical law is transgression of the moral law, because God is as truly the author of the physical law as he is of the moral law. He has written his law with his own finger on every nerve, every muscle, every faculty with which we have been entrusted. And every misuse of any part of our organism is a violation of that law. All should become intelligent as to the human frame and how to keep it in the condition necessary to do the work of the Lord. The relation that exists between the physical organism and the spiritual life is one of the most important branches of education, and I'd like to suggest one of the most neglected. The physical organism should be carefully preserved and developed, that through humanity the divine nature might be revealed in all of its fullness. That's taken from a little book called Christ Objects Lesson, page 347. And I believe that's why you are here this afternoon, is to find out about this amazing body that we live in. And in the first lecture, we went way down into the very nucleus of the cell, where we looked at the DNA, we looked at the DNA's role in the running of the human body, and also the DNA's role in disease. We looked at how genetics loads the gun, but it is lifestyle that pulls the trigger. We also finished by looking at the true role that microorganisms play on planet Earth. And now I'd like to go a little bit more inside the human body. And I'd like to have a look at the role they play on the inside workings of the human body. And I'm going to go inside the gut. When we were in utero, our gut was sterile. That means there were no microbes in our gut. And when we were born, we were literally showered with our mother's microorganisms. On the show The Gut Reaction by, and Catalyst put that on, there was an obstetrician that was being interviewed, and he said, I always thought God made a mistake putting the birth canal and the anus so close. Because when that baby comes out the birth canal, we don't want it to go anywhere near what's coming out of the anus. And you may remember, those of my era, that 40 years ago, 50 years ago, whenever a woman went in to have a baby, they gave her an enema to try and clean out that canal as much as possible. But they don't do that anymore. Notice what this obstetrician said. I always thought God made a mistake, but he said, I now know it's a perfect design. Because when the baby's head is crowning and the birth canal stretches open, that other orifice stretches open. And when the baby's skin hits the air, the baby goes, that first breath is laden with all the microbes that are coming out of the anus. Notice what he said? Perfect design. And I think we all know God does not make mistakes. And when the baby breathes in those microbes, it actually forms a thick turf wall covering the lining of the gastrointestinal tract. And that thick turf wall is made up of Lactobacillus acidophilus, bifidobacterium. They are the two permanent bacteria. And all the others, which are basically there's a jungle down there, are made from those two permanent. What role do these microbes play in the gastrointestinal tract? They are responsible for the final breakdown of our food. These microbes are responsible for the absorption of our food. You see, our gastrointestinal tract is a very interesting part of the body because it's a hollow tube. And anything that goes in there is not part of you or me till it gets broken down to tiny substances and then absorbed into the blood. Then it becomes part of you and me. The Bible says the life of the flesh is in the blood. The blood is the carrier. The blood carries all the nutrients to the inside workings of the cell. That's why I call the inside workings of the cell, I call that the CBD, the central business district of the human body. So let's get back to the microbes. Those microbes also protect. They play a role in protecting the blood. So the blood basically is all through this little villi. And this is the gut here. So can you see that this thick turf wall, it protects the blood from any harmful microbes that might be in the gut. But those microbes play another role. They are responsible for nourishing the cells that line the gastrointestinal tract. Are you starting to see that rather than being the enemy, these microbes are an integral part of life on planet Earth? And Antoine Bouchon, he did an experiment one day. He got a dead cat and he wrapped it in an airtight container. He came back 4 months later, opened the container, it was full of dust. Now in the bush, if say a kookaburra dies, then the dung beetles come up, the worms come up, the crow will have a peck and a dingo will have a peck, and the maggots from the blowflies. All of these things help to speed up the breakdown. But this is an airtight container. No magpies, no dingoes, no blowflies, no dung beetles, no worms. What brought the cat in the airtight container back to dust? The microorganisms that were an integral part of living, running cat, upon death of the organism, and the ultimate damage is death, they had to take their suit of clothes off, so to speak, put their rubber gloves and apron on and become the clean-up team. As the environment changed, the exterminators. As the environment changed, the undertakers, till eventually cat is now dust. It's a cycle of life. In fact, look at an egg. Say mother hen sitting on 10 chickens. I come along, pick up an egg, shake it violently, put it back under mother hen. I come back 2.5 weeks later, I hear chirp chirp, little chickens are breaking out of the egg. What happened to the egg I shook? Mother hen, if you watch, she'll boot it out of the nest with her little foot, her little claw. You see there's a bad smell coming out of that egg. What's caused the bad smell? When I shook that egg, I caused massive cell damage. Now, the microorganisms that would have been an integral part of developing little chicken have to put their suit of clothes off, so to speak, put their rubber gloves and apron on and become the clean-up team. Then the exterminators, then the undertakers. These microbes change roles according to the environment. Till eventually, dead cat, matter, was brought back to dust. It's the cycle of life. With great excitement, Antoine Bouchon got the dust from the dead cat, put it under his microscope. It was alive with microorganisms. They now are waiting in the dust for their next role. And isn't that why we have, we'll do it here, compost bins. Here's a plant in my garden. So I'm not a very good drawer. Maybe it's my celery plant. And here are the roots underneath. And I put compost into my soil. And when I put compost in my soil, what am I putting into my soil? Microorganisms. Now they play another role. They are responsible for the breakdown of the minerals and the heavy metals. They are responsible for the absorption of the nutrients into the plant. They are responsible for protecting that plant against any harmful pathogens. They are responsible for the nourishment of the plant. And the plant knows that it needs them, so 50% of the fuel that it makes from photosynthesis, it sends back down to the roots to feed the microbes. Beautiful illustration of taking only to give again. Did you know that's the law of life? Taking only to give again. And the law of service is written on every plant in nature. Plants take only to give again. Humans could learn much lessons from the plant life. That same process is happening in our gastrointestinal tract. Those microbes are responsible for the final breakdown of our food, the absorption of our food, the protection of our blood against harmful pathogens for the nourishment of those cells. Hippocrates said, all disease begins in the gut. Isn't it amazing that when a doctor graduates, he takes the Hippocratic oath? But they only spend several hours on nutrition and they don't spend a lot of time on this. They learn a lot on anatomy and physiology, but not how to apply it to the health of the human body. There are doctors that know nutrition, absolutely, but they've usually done their own study into that area. So these microbes aren't our enemies. If they are out of control, we have to ask, why are they there? And remember, they're just opportunist organisms. When I was a child, I used to get bronchitis a lot. And then when I nursed, I didn't live a very good life. I didn't become a Christian till I was probably my 3rd year as a mother. And I used to get bronchitis. And when I started coughing up any yellow lump, I would immediately think, I've got an infection. I must go to the doctor, and what would he give me? Antibiotics. This is the germ theory. It's so much easier to think a germ came in and caused what was happening in my lungs rather than too many late nights and not living right. Can you see it's not me, it's the germ. It's not me, it's my DNA. Let's have a look at what an antibiotic is. Notice what the word means. Anti means against. Biotic means life. Now, if we're living organisms, we have to get away from the kill mentality, because anything that has the ability to kill small organisms has the potential to kill the large. And what are we? We're the large. Let me tell you how the antibiotic was discovered. 1929, Alexander Fleming is growing bacteria in flasks in his laboratory. He comes in one morning and they're all dead. And he knew Newton's third law of motion. To every action there's an equal and an opposite reaction. Why has my bacteria died? He looked around, he began to investigate. Nothing in the laboratory indicated it might have killed it. The window was open. There was light streaming in the window, and he noticed dust on the sun's rays. He looked upstairs. In the next window there was a plate of fruit, and on the plate of fruit there was a mouldy orange. Do you remember the story from school days? The mould dust came down, settled on his bacteria and killed it. Alexander called the mould penicillium. Alexander Fleming called the mould waste. Now the mould waste is more toxic than the mould. You see, that's the dust that came and landed on his bacteria. He called the mould waste penicillic acid. And penicillic acid is the penicillin that we know today. And penicillic acid, or penicillin, has saved the lives of probably millions. And it will continue. But we have a problem today, and that is the overuse of the antibiotic and the inability of the physician to ask why. So when I'm 19 and I go to the doctor, he should have said to me, are you having early nights? Are you drinking enough water? What are you doing? Now, if he'd done that to me, I probably would have got up and went, I'm going to find another doctor that's going to just write me a script. And this is why Pasteur's theory was so much more popular than Antoine Béchamp. 6 times professor, this man. Because Antoine Béchamp said germs don't cause disease, they're the result. They're just opportunist organisms. Florence Nightingale cleaned up that hospital so much that there was nowhere for the bacteria to live. There was no food for it. A year ago, I read a Time magazine article on TB. And this journalist followed a health worker through these little villages in TB, drug-resistant TB. There were a few people that had drug-resistant TB. They weren't responding to the medication. So the journalist followed the health worker coming to the village. On the side of the path, the goats were pulling the rubbish all over the path. Note. Came closer to the little house where the man with drug-resistant TB was. Opposite, there was a red metal hut, Coca-Cola, selling Coca-Cola and sugar biscuits. Note. She went to the hut, and the dirty cloth that was the door she pulled aside. The stench nearly overwhelmed her. She walked inside the hut. On a dirt floor lay the man with drug-resistant TB. I read it, I thought, does anyone else see this? What's the use of the medication if there's filth everywhere for these microbes to live in? What's the point of the medication? The man's so sick he can't dig his crop, so he'll just eat the sweet biscuits and the Coca-Cola from the red hut. I said, have we gone mad? Don't we see this anymore? Why are they there? This was a year ago, Time magazine. To date, 1.5 million different molds, yeasts and fungus have been documented. My husband is my biggest critic, and I'm glad, because if I pass him, I'll pass anyone. He said to me, Barbara, I don't believe you. 1.5 million is a lot. I said, well, that's what I have read. He came back to me half an hour later, he said, 1.5 to 5 million. And of that 1.5 million, 1,000 of these mould wastes are known to cause disease in mankind. The link between mould, fungus and disease today is big, to the point of linking it with cancer. I have a book in my library by an Italian oncologist named Dr. Tullio Simoncini, and the book's title is Cancer is a Fungus. That's pretty clear, isn't it? He's been getting 90% success rate by injecting straight into the cancer sodium bicarbonate solution. You see, cancer, fungus love an acid environment. And sodium bicarbonate is your ultimate alkalizer. In fact, the lining of our stomach releases sodium bicarb, so that when the hydrochloric acid comes through the wall, if it does, it's neutralised so it won't eat the lining of our stomach. And our pancreas releases sodium bicarbonate, so that if there's still acid mixed with our food when it gets into our duodenum, the pancreas releases sodium bicarb to neutralise that. So it's a naturally occurring part of the body. But notice those two roles, it is used to alkalise, to neutralise. And so Dr. Tullio Simoncini, he injects it straight into the cancer and it immediately neutralises the area. I have another book by Professor Constantini. He's former head of the World Health Organization Department of Mycology. Now, the Department of Mycology is the department that studies mould. Myco is the medical term for a mould waste. So mycotoxin, basically mould waste. What's a toxin? It is a poison. Do you know the fumes coming off from these are pretty toxic? I think we know that, don't we? And I have written a book on this subject. It's called Self-Heal by Design, because I find that many people are unaware of these links. I probably spent nearly $5,000 getting my resource books because these people have done all the research, so I just quoted them in my book. Dr. this is Professor Constantini, the former head of the World Health Organization, Department of Mycology. Some of his books, he quotes 30,000 research papers showing the link between cancer and fungus. Just put cancer and fungus into the YouTube and you will see what it comes up with. There's a strong link between there. Some say, Barbara, you can't blame fungus for everything. Well, it certainly is a part of causing disease, but the question needs to be asked why it is there. It can be there for various reasons. When you realise it's an opportunist organism, when you realise that in the soil it breaks down the heavy metals and the minerals in the soil and makes them available for the plants. So if a person has mercury fillings in their mouth, can you see that can be a ground for fungus to be growing? If a person has had a lot of chemical exposure, that can be a ground for fungus to grow. If a person is eating a high sugar diet, that can be a ground. Can you see there are many areas? That's why the detective hat has to be put on. How can fungus get into the body? It can get in through 4 ways. Number 1, it can be breathed in. Never breathe in mould. If there is a mouldy orange in your fruit bowl, put the mask on, put the gloves on, or get tongs, pick it up. There's a toxic poison. Put it in a paper bag, screw it up. If you want to know how toxic mould is, do a Bible study on it. The King James Version calls mould leprosy. It says leprosy in the house. Green and yellow streaks. What's green and yellow streaks? Have you ever seen the lentil stew in the back corner of the fridge that's got green and red streaks? Been there a bit too long. And how do you know it's been there too long? You open the fridge and what does your nose tell you? You see, you're the doctor, your nose will tell you. The Bible calls, in the King James Version, leprosy in the house, leprosy in the clothes, and leprosy on the skin. If you go to the New International Version, it's the same word. They've interpreted leprosy in the house as mildew, leprosy in the clothes, mildew, leprosy on the skin, infectious skin disease. But if you were to do the same interpretation, it should be mildew on the skin, because it's the same word. But it's not technically. Right. If you go into a medical dictionary and look up myco, you will find myco before many diseases. I have a book at home called Clinical Mycology, the study of fungus. And it's written by 4 doctors, cost me $500. It's a medical textbook. And every chapter shows the fungal link with disease. So it has been medically proven, but very difficult for the pharmaceutical companies to acknowledge that, which play a large role in medicine. Because if cancer is a fungus, and if fungus plays a role in the majority of diseases, then medicine would have to acknowledge that some of their main medications are putting it into people. Antibiotics, how many people take an antibiotic and get a thrush? Because what's an antibiotic? It is waste. Do you know the human body can cope with 2 courses in a lifetime? A moment's silence for you to digest that one. Antibiotics, statin drugs are fungus-based. Your cortisones, contraceptive pill, all of these things are feeding or putting the fungus into the body. So then the $1 million question is, how do we get it out? First of all, 4 ways to get it in. Ingest it through medication or through food or through blue vein cheese. What's the blue in the blue vein cheese? It's mould. When I was a little girl and the bread was mouldy, Mum would say, don't worry about it, it's just penicillin. Well, it's actually not quite like that. So it can be ingested, it can be breathed in. If there's mould in your house, you've got to assess that. 3 years ago, SBS had a show called Is Your House Killing You? I don't know if anyone saw it. We have the 2 DVDs at our health retreat, 7 shows, and whoa, It's a real eye-opener. So you can ingest it, you can breathe it in, don't touch it. It can get through your skin. That's why you never pick up a mouldy orange. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. It'll get in. And sexually, most sexually transmitted diseases have a fungus base. Now the million-dollar question is, how do we get it out of the body? You have a secret weapon, and it's a strong, potent fungal killer, and it's called hydrochloric acid. If a person's hydrochloric acid is strong, even if they were to eat mouldy bread, it would wipe it out. But most people don't have strong hydrochloric acid anymore because they stress all the time, that drops it. They drink lots of water with their meals, that washes it away. They're eating every couple of hours, that overworks it and exhausts it. Did you hear all that? How many Aussies get a tick for all of those? But let me show you how you can get this out of the body. Number one, starve. What's fungus's yeast's favourite food? Sugar. We had a lady come to our health retreat. She rang me up last week. She said, you know, it's been 5 years. She came to our retreat, so it must have been 5 years ago. She said, I have 3 big tumours in my abdomen. She was, I think, early 60s or late 50s at the time. She said, the doctor said to me, you've got to start chemotherapy immediately. Do you know it's a gamble with chemo? They just hope that more of the cancer cells get killed than the good cells. It's and I'm afraid the survival rate is not very good. If someone survives 5 years after cancer and they die 2 days later, they're considered a cure because they made 5 years. You've heard the old treatment. Treatment was successful, but the patient died. You know, there's a human being here. We've got to keep that. If the human body was designed to heal itself, what we need to do is understand how it works and how we can build up the body to do it. So Elizabeth, and she doesn't mind me using her name's Elizabeth Cott from Melbourne. She said, I didn't like what they told me. So she said, a friend of mine gave me a DVD of yours on how to conquer cancer. She booked into Misty Mountain Health Retreat. She came for 2 weeks. She went through the program, which I'm going to define as I go. She said to me, I'm a vegan, I'm a vegetarian, but she said, I think I've found out the cause. She said, I'm the pavlova maker for our church. She said, I make pavlovas this big and I put 16 cups of white sugar. Think of that next time you're offered a slice of pavlova. I had some visitors come between Christmas and New Year and they bought a pavlova. I ate the fruit on top. Knowledge is easy to him that understands. When I understand what sugar does, when I understand how much is in that, I say, oh no thank you, I'll enjoy the strawberries on top. So you've got to starve it. All sugar must stop. And what we did with Elizabeth was for 6 weeks, no fruit. One lady said, but fruit's good. I said, it's fantastic. But cancer cells consume glucose at 15 times the rate of any other cell. And as Doug Kaufman in his book, The Germ That Causes Cancer, he said when you deprive cancer cells of glucose, they self-destruct. So no fruit for 6 weeks, not forever. No fruit for 6 weeks. Very low carbohydrate, because many carbohydrates break down very quickly to sugar. Absolutely no wheat. It breaks down incredibly fast to sugar. Also, you have to check the house, that there's no mould in the house. One lady that came to us with breast cancer, as she heard the lecture, she went, oh dear. And the other guest said, what is it? And she said, my house, the roof in every room is mouldy, particularly my bedroom. What's she breathing in while she sleeps every night? She said, there was this damp sawdust in my roof from the sawmill nearby, and there was a bit of a leak, and then the bats, you know, that insulate, what are they called? Bricks or something made out of fluff, pink bats. They were put on top, so they further insulated it. And where does mould love to live? Warm, damp areas with no air in there. One of the ladies said, "You've got to get out of that house." She said, "Oh, but the rent's so cheap." You've got to make a decision on these things. So what fungus loves is sugar, high sweet, other molds and yeasts. So this means no peanut butter. If you're sad at the thought of that, try macadamia nut butter, try almond butter, try cashew butter. But mold grows very, very easily on peanuts. You see, they're not a nut, they're a legume. They grow in the ground. In fact, we had a guy do our program. He said, "My mate did his thesis on mycotoxins." Remember mycotoxins, mold waste? Do you know where he did his thesis? Kingaroy. What grows in Kingaroy? Peanuts. If you grow peanuts, you harvest them, you dry them, you slowly bake them, and you grind up peanut butter, you can eat that peanut butter. But you see, 75% of Australians live in the city, and it's in storage that the problem arises. Cold, frosty morning, hot, sunny day, what's building up in the silos is moisture. You talk to anyone who's lived out west in the silos, they commonly are lined with mould. Number 2, so that's the first thing, starve the fungus. So what Elizabeth did, she went fruit-free for 6 weeks, no honeys, no sweeteners at all. She had a lot of vegetables. She had legumes every meal. She had nuts and seeds, lots of different vegetables, lots of different legumes, so you can have a nice variety. In fact, she's a beautiful cook, so she took her cooking skills from the pavlova to the legumes. In fact, she's Polish. She makes beautiful Polish food now, but instead of butter, she uses coconut oil or olive oil, and instead of cream, she uses coconut cream. So she's just replaced the not-so-goods with the really goods, and her food is amazing. God gave us taste buds for a reason. Food should taste fantastic, but it should be such that it's going to contribute to our healing. So Hippocrates' statement, let food be your medicine. And that's a very important part of it. Number 2, kill. I do think we've got to get away from the kill mentality, but there are herbs that will kill the fungus and won't kill you. In Psalm 104 verse 14, the Bible says that God gave herbs for the service of man. I love that verse. We're here to serve you. Where would you like us? Garlic is a potent fungal killer. Grapefruit seed extract, another strong one. Olive leaf extract. In my book, I give a whole list of all the herbs. And what Elizabeth did, every 2 weeks, she'd do another herb. The body gets used to things, so you keep changing the herbs that you do. Number 3, balance. Flood the gastrointestinal tract with the good guys. What are the good guys? There's your probiotic that line the gut. Probiotic means for life. And you can get some very nice vegetarian probiotics. So if someone comes to us wanting help with cancer, we'll put them on a double dose. Best time is 3/4 of an hour before breakfast, because it goes way down to the lining of the gut. If you take it with the meal, the hydrochloric acid can wipe it out a bit. We want it early to go down. Number 4, alkalize. Cancer loves acid, loves an acid environment. So how do you alkalize? You can go to YouTube, put Barbara O'Neill, YouTube, acid alkaline, and you'll get a 50-minute presentation on the acid alkaline foods. But basically, greens and vegetables are very alkalizing, and there are some legumes that are alkalizing. So what we do at our retreat, and when Elizabeth came to us, we gathered wild greens. This is stinging nettle and pumpkin tips and dock, all your edible greens that just grow wild. And we blend them with water, and then we strain them. So she drank 1 litre of green water a day, and this is alkalizing from the inside. So there's the green drinks. Now, when Elizabeth left us, she didn't have a big property and garden-like house to do that, and so she would just take green barley. So green drinks. Now, we are unable to inject sodium bicarb straight into the cancer. And so we do the next best, and I actually think it's even more effective, is we wrapped Elizabeth in sodium bicarbonate hot wet towels. We get 2 kilos of sodium bicarb, 5 litres of hot water with a little lemon in it, put the towels in, ring it round, and then we'd wrap one leg and another leg, the torso, and we wrap her whole body up in blankets and shower curtains, and we would leave her for 1 hour. So can you see what's happening? The body's taking it in through the skin, she's drinking it from the inside. We're actually making it impossible for cancer to survive in her body. Can you see how we're coming at it from the food, from the herbs, balancing the gut, alkalizing? So the sodium bicarb. The only time I would advocate drinking sodium bicarb is if the person had stomach cancer. And even then, you wouldn't drink it near the meal because you want a nice acid stomach to break your food down. So maybe just before bed or first thing in the morning, that's the only time I would advocate drinking it. So we gave her 5 sodium bicarbonate wraps the first week. They are an hour long. It's a specialised treatment. It needs 2 staff members to administer it. And then the next week, another 5. She was with us for 2 weeks. She went to the doctor 3 months later. The doctor looked at her blood tests and he said, "Come and see me in 6 months." Now, what did he say to her on the first visit? "You got to start chemo straight away." All her cancer markers were down. Her inflammatory markers were down. She rang me up. She was excited. So she went back 6 months later. So this is 9 months after the program. Meanwhile, at home, she can't do the sodium bicarbonate wraps, but there's no need. She had a good kickstart with us. She had the green drinks, taken the probiotic, the different herbs. She was on the specific diet. By now, she's eating low GI fruits like Granny Smith apple, grapefruit, maybe some berries. She went back to the doctor, so this is 9 months later. He said, "One of your tumours has gone." He said, "It is totally gone." He said, "I cannot understand it." By now, she's lost weight. She's in her new Pierre Cardin suits. She's off all her other medication for all the other bits and pieces. She said, "I'm early 60s. I feel better than I felt when I was in my 40s. She went, so now she only has to go every 9 months. Next time she went, another tumour had gone. They cannot understand it. It's several years later now. She said to me, "I have one tumour is still there, but the doctor said it's not doing anything." In fact, Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez, I don't know if anyone is familiar with Dr. Nicholas Gonzalez. He has written a book on cancer. Unfortunately, he has passed, unfortunately under questionable circumstances, but he lived in America. I read an interview of him, and the interviewer said, "Tell me about your cancer cure rate." He said it's like this: if a diabetic eats right, lives right, they can control their diabetes. He said it's the same with cancer. You see, the body can heal itself. Whereas if you give it the right conditions, she gave it the right conditions and she got the result. She said, "The last time I went to see the doctor, the oncologist was there, the specialist was there. They can't understand. They can't understand what's happening. All her cancer markers are right down." But what Nicholas Gonzalez also said, he said, "I know people, it's 5 years later, all the tumours are gone." He said, "I know other people, the tumours are not gone, but they're not doing anything." He said, "I can never predict." He said, "I can never predict." Some people, I find, they're held back by rotten teeth, by mercury, by root canal fillings, because what these are doing are causing a development of bacteria behind the tooth. Can you see why the detective hat has to be put on? There are so many different ways that they can affect. Number 5 is ormus. Ormus is orbitally rearranged monoatomic elements. Now what ormus is it's minerals that have been dropped out of seawater in a monoatomic form. And the research coming from America now shows that these minerals in their monoatomic form are able to heal DNA damage. So now we get back to what can heal the damage in the DNA, and that are these minerals. In his book, The Calcium Lie, Dr. Robert Thompson, basically his whole book is on minerals. And he suggests that to get your mineral content up, definitely organics, definitely dark greens, but to buy the Celtic salt, because the Celtic salt has 82 minerals in it. Seawater has 92 minerals. He says before every glass of water, put a crystal of Celtic salt on your tongue and drink that glass of water down. He said all that will do is replace the minerals from yesterday. So now we're getting back to the importance of minerals. But ormus is minerals in a monoatomic form. So that's one step more, showing their ability to heal the DNA damage. So what we did with is Elizabeth, we started her on 5 drops in the morning of the ormus. Every week, increase a drop. And at the 16th week, she was up to 16 drops, which is a teaspoon, and now she still takes that as a maintenance dose. In fact, a lot of farmers are using ormus now in their garden because it can feed the plants and give incredible growth. Is it that simple? Do you know it is? And we have seen some incredible turnarounds, like Elizabeth's story. I'll tell you another story which is also very interesting. And this man's name was Alan, and he was in his mid-70s, and he said to me, because he came to do our program, he said, I have a cancer tumour on my liver. I also have some cysts on my liver. And so we put him on this program. I talked to him a few months later. I said, how are you going? How are you finding the diet? He said, I love it. I'm alive. 4 months later, he came to see me. He said, I used to drag myself out of bed in the morning. He said, now I leap out of bed. This guy's in his mid-70s. He was a vegetarian. He was a vegan. But you know what he loved? Peanut butter. You know what else he loved? Sugar. He loved sugar, biscuits. So the sugar and the wheats, I guess it's a similar thing to Elizabeth, where, you know, the sugar was feeding it. He said, a few amazing things are happening. He said, I've always had fungus toenails. They're growing through clear. He said, I've had a lump in my sternum for a while. He said, it's gone. He said, I had a lump in my testes. He said, it's gone. All these other things are clearing up. He said, it's like I've got a new lease on life. It's at this point, most people are in danger because they feel they can just do whatever they want. Now, this man stayed eating well, but he did some staining work in an old church, and it was very, very toxic, the stain that he used, and he went down very quickly. And when he rang me, unfortunately, tumours had risen in his colon, and it blocked up his colon, and unfortunately, he did not live long after that. So it's a very sad story. One wonders if he'd still be with us if he hadn't been exposed to those strong chemicals in that stainer. When someone has a serious illness, it takes serious steps to turn it around. And even once it's turned around, they must now be cautious. Now, Elizabeth Cott, she's giving little health lectures, she's giving cooking classes. In fact, she is an incredible testimony of this amazing body that we live in and its ability to heal itself. So when someone rings me and they have cancer, this is what I say to them. I say to them, I have seen incredible turnarounds. In fact, some people that I wondered if they would make it have. Sometimes I've seen 3 months go into 6 years, and sometimes I've seen the last days made more comfortable. And we have had a few people that have passed. When they came to us, it was at quite a advanced stage. And sometimes in an advanced stage, it's very difficult for them to do everything you've got to do to get a turnaround. But for those who have passed, their family always get back to us and say, thank you so much, because at least the last days were made more comfortable. So at every step, as you can see, it's always a plus. I can never predict the outcome, but what I say to people, there's one thing I can promise you, we're going to give it our best shot. We're going to do all that we can. And there is a God in heaven that is interested in our healing and wants us to heal. But we do not know his plans in our life. There's a verse in Ezekiel 36:36, so that's an easy one to remember. Ezekiel 36:36. It says that the heathen that are left round about might know that I, the Lord God, build the ruined places and plant again that which was desolate, for I, the Lord God, hath spoken it, and I will do it. That is a beautiful verse that you can claim. And God gave us those promises to claim. So no matter what the stage, I think God does want us to give it our best shot. Now, with some women, especially with breast cancer, I'll put this added sideline onto it. With breast cancer, there's a definite hormonal imbalance there, because if there's not a hormonal imbalance, these growths cannot develop in the reproductive organs. So in that situation, and also men with prostate cancer, there needs to be a hormone balancing cream applied. And there is a cream called the Anna's Wild Yam Cream, and it will balance the hormones. If you put Barbara O'Neill hormones into YouTube, you can watch that lecture. So say a woman has breast cancer, and we've seen a few turnarounds with this. They implement the list that I have here. They also apply the Anna's Wild Yam Cream, which will balance the hormone. You see, the pill especially, it causes estrogen to rise. And estrogen, the Cancer Foundation have issued a warning, estrogen is a known human carcinogen. So taking something like the Anna's Wild Yam Cream boosts progesterone, which gets estrogen down. And also with something like breast cancer, castor oil compresses. Castor oil penetrates very, very deep into the body, and wearing a castor oil compress can help to break up the tumour in the breast. So you can see with different types of cancer, there might be little bits of fine-tuning on special poultices or water treatments or herbs. But what I have shown you here is the basic guideline that we use to help people to conquer cancer, because the human body was designed to heal itself, and it will if you give it the right conditions. I have a few minutes to answer questions, if there are any questions. Yes?
Spirulina.
Spirulina.
Would you recommend spirulina?
Can we recommend spirulina? Spirulina is a green, and when someone goes home and does green drinks at home, they may use chlorophyll, they may use spirulina, they may use green barley, they may...
Any contraindications with spirulina?
Is there any contraindications with spirulina? No, there is not.
Thank you very much.
No, so that's, remember, it's chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is one of the most potent blood and tissue cleansers in the body. I can repeat the question, yeah? Soy. Question on soy. My girlfriend did a thesis on soy, and this is her one-line answer. God made soy good, man mucked it up. You must agree that soy has been used for centuries all through Asia with no detrimental effects. So when soy's been genetically modified and when soy has been grown with herbicides and insecticides, it is a dangerous product. In Australia, soy is not genetically modified yet. But if you buy tofu, make sure it's organic, because if an organic farmer uses genetically modified seed, he loses his status. Some say, what about soy milk? Well, I don't believe we should be drinking milk because we're weaned. We've got teeth. We eat food. So I personally don't use milk at all. Yes?
What about bicarbonate
What about bicarbonate soda? Now, we are warned
Drinking it, not
there
wrapping
is a
it.
problem of putting sodium bicarbonate into cakes. You have probably heard that because it interferes with digestion. The only time I would advocate drinking sodium bicarb is in stomach cancer. And even then, just before bed or just when you wake up, because you want an acid stomach to break down your food, so it has to be taken between meals. It will not alkalize the tissues like the green drinks will. Sodium bicarbonate only alkalizes what it touches. Yeah?
So are the greens good for leukemia?
Pardon?
The greens, are they good for leukemia?
Yes, greens are excellent for leukemia. Let me show you something about greens. I'll head over here. Here is the molecular structure of human blood. Here is the molecular structure of plant blood, which is chlorophyll. Almost looks identical, doesn't it? Except for the middle molecule. The middle molecule on human blood is iron, and the middle molecule on plant blood is magnesium. So very similar to human blood is the chlorophyll.